Joining me on the line, I believe he's in his car on the way back from Ames. Ladies and gentlemen, Jonathan Schaeffer's on the line. Hey, Jonathan, what's up?
Yeah, you nailed it on the head there, B-sox. I am driving down 80 right now, or no, 35. Holy cow, if I'm on 80, I'm going the wrong way. I'm heading to Iowa City. That's how desperate I am for a big matchup.
There you go. Jonathan Schaeffer from Weir, Iowa, Local 5 joining me. Listen, we got a lot to get to in a very short amount of time. Got a long way to go in a short time to get there. Hey, college football in the state of Iowa fires up this week, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like week one, and there's nothing like week one coming out of a pandemic, knowing that we have full stadiums ahead. It's going to be a thrilling week, and even better, my college or my sports betting accounts are going to be busier than ever, too. I can tell you that much.
Are you into that stuff?
Oh, yeah, I dabble a little bit. Hey, you got to rig the system at times, so I got my wife to sign up just so I could get my refer a friend bonus, okay?
Oh, there you go. Perfect. All right, well, you're coming back from Ames. Let's start there. Iowa State and UNI hooking up this weekend. Here, I want to get your general take on it here, but in a second, I want to play a little game with you, okay?
Okay, deal.
I did research and everything for this, so just keep that in mind.
Uh-oh. Well, yeah, I mean, general take, if you don't mind. I mean, Iowa State, UNI, it should be an Iowa State bloodbath against the Panthers, and I say that with all due respect to Northern Iowa, but the team that Iowa State puts on the field this week is expected to be one of the best in the country, and even the best FCS programs should not be competitive for full four quarters against them. So that being said, it's going to be a fun game to watch. I think UNI still presents plenty of challenges for the Cyclones. You know, just talking with Matt Campbell, there's the utmost respect for what Northern Iowa does, what Mark Farley has done up there in Cedar Falls with this program, and certainly I know Panthers haven't named a starting quarterback, but I assume it's going to be Will McElvain, the Southsider, taking the reins once again this year. And there's nothing but a lot of appreciation for what he's capable of doing from not just Campbell, but these guys on the defensive side of the ball for Iowa State. Offensively, though, I expect a heavy dose of Breece Hall. I expect a calm and collected Brock Purdy, and they are set on starting the season out of the gun, just flying, instead of what we've seen in years past where they've been a little bit slow, they've even lost, and that's the last thing this team needs out of the gate.
There's been a few years that they've started with UNI. Of course, not last year. It was Louisiana last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, Louisiana was that loss they had week one, and then they climbed all the way back and made that awesome run. But 2 years ago in 19, Northern Iowa into overtime. So, I mean, who knows what could happen.
That's what I was going to say, or that's what I was trying to get to, was, one, when they've played UNI, it hasn't exactly been a cakewalk. Now, they've never been this good, but it's not like that game was ever really guaranteed. There's been a couple close ones, there's been some losses, and so on and so forth. I mean, this is the year, if they're going to get off to a great start, they have to do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you cannot come out of the blocks dragging your feet. I mean, you've got to come out, drive number one for touchdown right away. Defensively, you got to hit UNI in the mouth and never step off of them. You know, you've got to keep your foot on their chest and bury them and really make it a statement to the rest of the country. Like, yeah, I know it's an FCS opponent, but we're doing exactly what we should be doing against an FCS opponent who's a very good one at that.
Jonathan Schaeffer from Weir, Iowa, Local 5 joining me. UNI played in the spring this past year. Does that hurt or help them coming up this season?
I think it's a little bit of a both. You know, you've got some guys that are probably feeling a little bit like they've been dragged through the mud a tad just because the off season isn't the typical recovery time that they're used to getting. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And, you know, you play as close to a full slate as you can in the spring. And then in the fall, you know, it's a quick turnaround. And guess what? You get to open with the number 7 team in the country. And that's just kind of a slap in the tail. But there's no drop-off the fact of rust. I mean, you don't get that rust factor in there. So I think it's a kind of a mixed bag a little bit. You'd like more time to prepare and recover, but at the same time, you've had time to be together as one, and you know what you have coming into this fall.
What do you think the final score is this weekend?
Like 42-10.
So you don't think it's close at all this time?
No, I mean, I think I saw the spread on it. It's like 37.5. And it's not that I don't think Iowa State could cover. I think Iowa State plays their second string and third string guys all of the fourth quarter and maybe even to the third quarter.
What happens if they have to keep their starters into the fourth? Like, it's close going into there.
You're dreading life and the headlines of what's to come. You know, I don't think you want that because you know you're going to have a heavy football team waiting for you the next week in Iowa. You know, that's going to be the most physical battle they might see this season, not knocking Oklahoma's defense or offense by any means, but the physicality that Iowa plays with and the Big Ten plays with really isn't there week to week for the Big 12. And so I think Iowa State's going to know that, the next week they're going to be getting a heavy football team to face off against. And you don't want that on their bodies. And you certainly don't want to have to do a typical week's recovery for the bruises and battering that these guys take week to week. You kind of want to get out of it unscathed.
Jumping over to the world of Iowa, they're starting with no cupcake at all. It's a conference game. It's you haven't played well against this team. You've won and lost a couple. I can't remember what the exact record is over the last couple of years, but it's not like you've blown out Indiana in recent memory. Iowa hosting Indiana this Saturday. What are you thinking about this one?
I'm thinking the spread at 3.5 is not one I want to touch. Anyway, no, I think Iowa and Indiana is going to be a heck of a football game, a top 20 matchup. We're going to learn a lot about the Hawkeyes, specifically on that offensive and defensive line right out of the gates too. Indiana touts a running back who's a transfer from a high-end program. I can't remember. I think he's
a
like
5-star, right?
Yeah, he's like a USC 5-star transfer or something like that. That should scare him a little bit. I mean, you're going to have your hands full. But Iowa's Iowa. I mean, you don't want to be Indiana necessarily because Kirk Ferentz and company have had the entire fall camp to prepare for you. And, I think that does some favors for Iowa State in week 2. But at the same time, Iowa can't come out and lay an egg. I think they could go win the Big Ten West this year easily if they can get through Camp Randall in Wisconsin. And so I think it'll be an interesting game 1. I think Iowa comes out and wins it. Is it a 3-point game? Probably. Last second field goal, or it's one of those where maybe like Indiana scores late and makes it a 3-point game. They have to go for the onside. They don't get it. Iowa wins it. I think the Hawkeyes.
That's pretty specific, man.
I mean, I've seen enough Iowa football to know how it typically goes here, B-sox. I mean, I think a full stadium is going to be a huge deal. I think it's going to change the dynamic because you got to remember the Big Ten didn't play in front of any fans last year other than parents and guests. So I think that plays into it a lot. I think that throws Indiana a little bit of a wrench, and I think it might even throw Iowa a wrench a little bit off the start, maybe for Spencer Petras. But I think they settle down. Tyler Goodson's going to get 20-plus carries. You're going to see some breakout stars on the wide receiving core. Tyrone Tracy's going to have a huge day, I think, too. And I think Iowa wins it by 3.
Jonathan Schaeffer from We Are Iowa Local 5 on the line. Okay, this is the part of the call that this is where it's going to get interesting. I'm going to poke holes in both teams, and we're focusing mainly on Iowa and Iowa State here, simply because Iowa State has the biggest expectations the school has ever had before for college football, and Iowa is kind of sitting out there where people are like, oh, they're coming off a 6-2 season, winning 6 in a row. They could be pretty good. No one's talking about them. I want to see what your take is on this stuff. Okay. Hello. Did you hang up on me? Hello, Jonathan?
I muted myself with my face. I'm sorry. I've got big cheeks.
Thanks, Brad Edwards. I appreciate that.
I'm smiling ear to ear just talking to you, B-sox, and that just muted my phone on me. I'm sorry.
All right. Who do you want to start with, Iowa or Iowa State?
Let's go Iowa State.
All right. Iowa State. And this is just basically to poke holes in the story, and I want to see how you react to it, okay?
Okay, go for it.
All right, Iowa State coming off of a pretty amazing season. They're one of the possibly best teams in the country. So if you look at it from last year, they had 3 blowout wins, and that was, beyond like 14 points and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah.
Their 3 blowouts were Kansas, K-State, and West Virginia. An 0-9, 4-6, and 6-4 team. They had 4 games within 7 points. So within a touchdown, you had TCU, who was 4-6. You had Oklahoma, 9-2. Baylor, 2-7. Texas, 7-3. And then there are other 2 losses that are kind of mid-range losses, or mid-range wins, were against a 4-6 team and a 4-3 team, who happened to be Oregon, who happened to lose 3 of their last 4 games to quote-unquote win the Pac-12 because of COVID and all that. So here's my question. I have no doubt that Iowa State is good. Are they that good?
Yes. I think there's something to be said for, 20 or 19 returning starters from a year ago back starting again this year. I think you just don't get experience like that anywhere. And I know these teams are getting a year older and a year better. I think what also helps Iowa State is the Big 12 might be down a little bit this year.
Okay.
And frankly, you get Iowa after a UNI game in which you should be resting your start fourth quarter, and then you get UNLV, who's absolutely terrible, and it's going to be a de facto home game in the Raiders Stadium down there, week 3. And I think they are every bit as good as they paper, because you've got Brock Purdy, a fourth-year quarterback who started every single year of his career. You've got wide receivers who are expected to be breakout performers in the Big 12 and in the country. But then you've also got your go-to tight ends. The offensive line is a year older and a year better, and last year they were probably the best offensive line we've seen under Matt Campbell. And then defensively, I think that's the only question mark is your defensive front, because you're replacing the guy who's set the career record for sacks all-time at Iowa State and Jaquan Bailey. But guess what? You still got Will McDonald. You've got a guy in Zach Peterson on the other side who's going to get after it. Your linebacking core all returns, including an All-American and Mike Rose. And then your safety and DBs might be the best in the Big 12.
So going back to it, I mean, you go back to last year, and again, this is me just playing, as far as a name for it, devil's advocate, okay?
Yep.
Because there's going to be like, well, he's a Hawk fan. He's just doing this. It's like, no, I'm going to do this to Iowa here, and I can bury.
Everyone's doing it right now. Everyone's doing it.
And I am absolutely going to bury Iowa here in a few minutes. But you look at 4 games where it's within a touchdown to 2 teams that are under 500 and 2 teams that, Texas, 7-3, but a questionable 7-3, and an Oklahoma team that you played close twice. Right? Those games, those are the type of games that, and again, this is kind of in Iowa State's favor, but in the past, they have lost those games.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. And I think Matt Campbell would agree with that. I don't think there's any doubt. And Campbell's never shied away from the fact that Iowa State has had to learn how to win close games, and it comes down to margins. If you look at the games they lost last year, it was lost in the margins, whether that be special teams in week 1 or too many turnovers in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah.
And so I think that's what will decide Iowa State's fate again. I think they've matured, though, and I think they can eliminate some of those mistakes that led to those losses in the margins. I think Brock Purdy sees the game better coming into his senior year than maybe he was in his junior year.
I guess in this whole thing, and then on more of a national level, you've only had Oklahoma make it to the college football playoff, and they've never won. Is the Big 12 up to everybody else? Because when people start talking about this, and I mean, there have been people that, and it's not just the huge Cyclone fan. It's the guy that it's like, you know what, Iowa State could be your national champion.
Yeah,
is it that good?
Scary
That's
thought,
what,
isn't it?
It's a scary thought, but then you start looking at it as like the best team from the Big 12 and the 4 chances that they've gotten to go to the college football playoff haven't done so well.
Yeah, I mean it's tough because you don't have a measuring stick for Iowa State, because the best non-conference team they play every year is Iowa.
Yeah.
And not knocking Iowa by any means, but they're not in Alabama, Clemson.
No, they're not.
Or they're not even in those tiers. But then you look at what Iowa State has been able to do against Oklahoma. And yes, Oklahoma hasn't been able to match anybody's muster. And frankly, I mean, let's be real, no one was matching Alabama in those semifinal games anyway.
No.
And so I think there's an aspect of it where we don't know until we try. And so I think Iowa State could be, but they have to take care of business every single, what makes Alabama, what makes those teams special is they don't make those mistakes in the margins the way, that some of these other Big 12 teams, and the way that frankly Iowa State has in the past few years. They don't make those same mistakes. And so, if Matt Campbell can carve out those mistakes through coaching, through just execution, and we're talking about a team that very well could lay it down. Now, do I think they're going to go out and run Alabama? No, don't even get me started there. But at the same time, can they be competitive? Could they give Alabama a game? Give this coaching staff a week? I think they'll be ready for anybody.
Jonathan Schaeffer from We Are Iowa Local 5. I'm taking it you stopped because it got quieter.
I just parked. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. I imagine you need to go do stuff. We'll do Iowa real quick, and I'll get you on your way, okay?
No problem. I'm in no rush.
All right. So switching over to Iowa. So you do think Iowa State's that good. And you know what? I think they're that good. My only fear is, and I've seen that with some teams, is you have a legitimately better team, but a worse record than the year before.
Yeah.
That's
it could very well happen.
And that's my only thought. When you have, like your 4 games where you were decided by 7 points or less, to, TCU, who's supposed to be better, who Texas is, well, God knows what's going on in Texas, but, Baylor, who knows what's going on there either. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, could this team run into the issue where it's better team, one more loss than last year, or what have you? That was my only thought there. So going over to Iowa, and this is where I bury the Hawkeyes. Set it up. Iowa 6-2 last year, went on a 6-game winning streak. We're supposed to go to a bowl. We're supposed to play Michigan and Missouri and the hottest team that could sneak up. No one's talking about them. That's usually when Kirk Ferentz does well. Iowa's 6-2 record was against a combined 24-30 last year. Every one of their wins last year, except for one, was against an under 500 team. The combined, So when you just do the combined record of their 6 wins, it's against teams that are 18-28 overall. You
don't have to put it that way, B-sox. Jeez.
Here's the other thing about it. To me, last year watching it, and I told my friends this, and you're going to hear an amazing bleep here. Iowa seemed like a team that their way with luck to a 6-2 record. Am I off?
No.
I told you I was going to bury him.
I'm not sure. I get where you're coming from. Last year in the Big Ten was such a weird year, though. I think
there were only 7 teams in the Big Ten. There were only, I believe it's 6 or 7 that only had a winning record, and even those winning records were close to like a little over 500. But anyways, you come into this year and you've got Kirk Ferentz could be sneaky good and all this stuff and all that, and Spencer Petras. Can Iowa do any of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think let's go back to your stat line really quick. I think that goes to show how much inflation happens on records from non-conference cupcake games.
Yeah,
let's just start there. But 2, Nebraska's down; they're garbage, and they proved that again. And then, you look at the game Iowa lost against Northwestern. If they score a field goal in that game, they win it.
Yeah.
In the second half, if they score a field goal in that second half, they win it. They're a win away, or they're a field goal away from being in the Big Ten championship. It's just, and last year was so bizarre. You look at the setup for that team, and Spencer Petras didn't get a full spring camp, did not get a full fall camp. I mean, shoot, we were still in this spot last year, sitting there saying, well, the Big Ten's not playing football because of myocarditis, which talk about total dropping the ball there. And so it was a totally different dynamic a year ago. Now Spencer Petras has a full spring, a full fall, a full year under his belt as a starter, even though it was in a strange environment. I think it'll be interesting to see Iowa in road games. I think that's where we'll find out what kind of Iowa team we have this year. I think at home they'll win it. They'll take care of their business. I think on the road is where the challenges are really going to be. Camp Randall is a different beast when that place is jumping around, and so it's just I think Iowa can go win the Big Ten West. Absolutely. They've got all the pieces. They've got the best center in the country. The guys around him need to figure out what they're doing, and we'll be fine there. The secondary, no one is beating Iowa deep this year. I've talked about it with multiple people. Nobody is beating Iowa over the top. Everything is going to be in front of them. So if you can nickel and dime Iowa to a win, okay. I think Iowa will take that. They'll say, all right, well, fine. We lost by 2 points on some safety because we made a boneheaded punt play or something, But yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think Iowa very much is going to be a Big Ten West contender. They are every year. They've kind of proven that they and Wisconsin are the 2 that belong in that conversation this year. Wisconsin is still Wisconsin, but it's whether or not you can navigate on the road. You've got to go steal a couple on the road this year for Iowa. Otherwise, on the other side, if that offensive line doesn't put it together, we're talking about a team that maybe gets 5 wins this year.
It hasn't happened in a while, and that's what I'm afraid of.
Well, and that's a testament to Kirk Ferentz. I think the odds and the ceiling for this team are very, very high, and I actually do think the floor is pretty standard too. I think you're looking at bowl qualifier for sure. Just because you've got Kent State, I think they get the win against Indiana. I think if they can get through these first 3 weeks at 2-1, 2-1, they'll be just fine for the regular season.
All right, Jonathan Schaeffer from We Are Iowa Local 5 needs to get going. Everybody, he's got things to do.
I do not need. You can have me on for another 20 minutes.
Oh, don't get me started because we could go into that whole ESPN high school football thing. That's just
oh my goodness.
It's just
a sycamore. It's the next 30 for 30.
It's the greatest
What if
story
I told
ever.
you we got duped?
What if I told you that high school didn't exist?
What if I told you 20 and 30-year-old football players lost 58-0 to a bunch of high school players?